Welcome back to week number 6 of the Hearthstone Collegiate National Championships. 1 match down and 2 to go today. My name's Cora Giorgio, and I'm joined on the desk by Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. And let's take a look at the standings for the North. Our next match is going to be Carleton University taking on University of Michigan. Carleton certainly sitting at 12th in the North region. They have a 4-1 match score, 12-7 game score. There's another team from Carleton sitting at 15th, but the one we're looking at is currently in 12th. And then Michigan is sitting at 26th, also with a 4-1 match record and a 14-6 game score.
Yeah, this still do or die time for these teams. The first match we saw it. It was a secured victory and a chance for that playoff spot, 100% once you hit that 5-win mark. Another one is here right now. The losing team, they're not out of it just yet, but it means they only have 1 week left to get the job done. So this is the crunch time for these teams. The next 2 weeks have to be very well played. They have to take it pretty seriously, and this is right in the midst of a balance patch too. So a lot of work needs to be put in to figure out where the metagame's going after small-time Buccaneer gets moved down to that 1 health and the whole thing gets shaken up.
There's a lot of movement in the meta right now, and this is do or die. One of these teams is going to get their 5th win and secure their spot in the regional playoffs, and one of them is going to have to fight harder than ever for it next week. So here we can see Carleton University and University of Michigan.
Yeah, and as that change happened, we heard it last series. Swipe is a lot better versus Pirate Warrior when he can clear the whole board. Sherbrooke had that situation come up where small-time Buccaneer, even if it had hit the board, would have been caught in a swipe at some point. So Priest, Druid, those classes feel much more comfortable fighting in those situations. And as those decks slow down, you're going to see those mid-range decks crop up.
Yeah, we're going to take a closer look at Carleton University. 10 teams from Carleton, but the most interesting thing is that they're actually playing at their own Fireside Gathering right now.
Ooh.
Fireside Gatherings have been a pivotal part of the Hearthstone experience for a while now, and you can see their fans behind them rooting them on, fellow lovers of Hearthstone, all gathered to support their team.
Yeah, that's a lot of what Firesides are about, is just communion of players and finding people and meeting people who share similar interests to you. In this case, is Hearthstone. Just a bunch of people sitting around playing cards.
It's an awesome opportunity. You just get to hang out with people who love what you love.
Just fun.
Yeah. Here we can see Carleton University, CU Fitzy, Mud Duckin, and Gamer Dude, computer science, game design, interactive multimedia and design, and economics.
God, Gamer Dude. That's a tough tag to get. He's the first Gamer Dude.
The only Gamer Dude, no numbers behind him. The OG. And here's University of Michigan, Orion Mango, Thrag Tusk, and Darkhawk 2000, biology, computer science, and finance. Darkhawk, however, there were 1,999 before him.
Yeah, and that's dedication to the name, is when you just really got to have Darkhawk there. We saw this team earlier in the season on broadcast, and frankly, I liked the performance. It's very rare that you can make me laugh just completely in the middle of a sentence on a broadcast. But that'll do it. That's a perfect drawing.
I mean, you were the first artist that we saw today. Your Dollar on Flame card back was pretty on point.
I'm not even majoring in economics.
I'm not even majoring in game design or multimedia studies.
And they're able to come up with such a brilliant drawing.
Truly inspirational.
Yeah, when Ngoro comes out, that's when Nax comes out again.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems to be that.
Nax comes out of hiding when Ngoro actually is put into play.
Why do they do that? I just don't get it. It's funny.
Because you can't tell Twitch what they can and can't laugh at.
Interesting. So look at the way the bans have been shaped here. The Warrior on the side of Michigan seems to have scared off Carleton on the Druid. Maybe they just don't have experience on it. We certainly heard that last series as well. They just didn't play Rogue because they weren't comfortable with it.
Well, and a lot of times Druid is picked because your opponent, well, because Reno decks were very prevalent. And Druid is great against Reno Mage. It's okay against Reno Warlock. Don't see Mage and Warlock on the side of University of Michigan. That might have a lot to do with the self-ban on the Druid.
Yeah, there are 2 softer targets on Carleton's side, where there's only really 1 soft target on Michigan's side, where the Druid is concerned. So that's pretty interesting. Priest also looks a little bit weak versus Carleton, where the Priest for Carleton looks a little bit stronger.
Yeah, the Priest up against the Reno Warlock is a matchup you just don't want to get.
You ever been to a Fireside?
I have, actually. I've been to a couple Tavern Heroes. just outside of Chicago. Actually, really interesting. I met the entirety of the Robert Morris University Collegiate Esports Hearthstone team at the very first Tavern Hero I went to. Played against a couple of them in the tournament, and then one of them, I think his name was Sataros, actually went on to a top 16 finish at HCT just a couple months later.
That's super cool.
It was really awesome. They were great guys.
I met Doug at a fireside at the Folsom Street Foundry, and
Doug's great.
He ended up going on to be a producer for esports content. He focuses on Hearthstone. I love Doug. Doug's a great guy to work with. But
it's amazing the people you get together. Everybody who loves Hearthstone. It's such varied backgrounds. You can meet so many great people.
Yeah, and it's not like you have to have a fireside specifically hosted by an organization in order to have one. It really, almost anyone can host a fireside anywhere where you could meet up with other people.
Yeah, it gets to, people who love competition. You can have firesides with tournaments in them, or you can just have firesides where people come and hang out, eat some food, maybe just play some games with each other.
Yeah, that's the one that I really like, is just meeting with other people and just jamming some games, playing some Hearthstone.
Or in this case, you have a fireside gathering where you come together to support a team from your school. You show that collegiate pride there. If Carleton wins this match, they're through to the next round of this tournament. That's a big deal.
Yeah. A lot of information about firesides on battle.net. You just navigate through there, and you can find a lot of information about it. Again, anyone can host it. Just sign up, make the post there.
You can search like certain mile radius if there's any around you.
You can find
I know there's
others.
one that's like bi-weekly near me. It's a little bit far. I haven't been to it yet, but it's been on my radar. I've been thinking about it.
I'm looking forward to going back to San Francisco myself and going there. So Druid versus Reno Warlock going to be our first match. And this is often a tough one for Carleton and their Warlock. This matchup boils down a lot of times to how effectively Carleton can take care of what Michigan presents on board. Now, a big problem with that is that Michigan doesn't really do a lot early. They spend their early game investing in extra cards, trying to build their mana pool with Wild Growth and Jade Blossom and the like. And their threats start coming down a lot later, and they tend to be a lot bigger. And they don't really stop. That's the nature of the Jade machine, is that...
And they don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming. They hit the ground running with the Jade Druid.
No comment.
Well, the Reno Warlock is really just, it's going to have two things that are very important in this matchup. One of them is going to be the very heavy-hitting mid-range minions, the Twilight Drake and the Mountain Giant, and then the Leroy combo. Certainly could shut out this game before Michigan has a chance to hit the ground running with the Jade Golems.
Yeah, and not stop running.
Never stop, never stopping.
Now, if they run so far away, that's going to do it. And that's really the big key for them is getting to that point where they have those explosive turns with card draw. One of the most powerful tools against just like simple 4-power minions in the middle of stages of the game is Doomsayer. If your opponent wants to actually kill a Doomsayer, oftentimes it occupies their mana, and so they don't get to play a minion, which is kind of the purpose of the card, or it gets to destroy their minion, which means they're not playing a minion, and you get to take the initiative on board.
Well, it's really important to play this matchup as much as possible to really learn the ins and outs of the Jade Druid. Sometimes you're playing night and day. You're running your golems night and day.
It's a really tough situation for Carleton to be in because Druid has Nourish. And I know that sounds just kind of like a weird thing to say, but in the face of key cards like Doomsayer, with Sylvanas presenting awkward trades...
Gives you the key turn to draw cards.
Right. They have that opportunity to fit in that 5-mana card and just build their economy. And that's such a big facet for the deck. If Michigan runs out of cards, that's where they can lose the game to a big board sweep. If they just keep churning out extra card draw, though, they get there. And it's never a fatigue battle for Michigan. They have Jade Idol in the deck. So when they get to a super late stage point, it slows down a little, but the minions are so gigantic at that point that it requires pressure from Carleton's side. So this is really a battle of how soon can they get a threat online and put Michigan to the test to play defensively rather than to their own game plan.
Yeah, Michigan, all things considered, has had a fair start, but no large Jade minions, no ramp left in hand other than the Innervate, so they're going to have to start finding some cycles, start drawing some cards, and getting really their heavy-hitting minions. You don't want to give Carleton time to amass all of the combo pieces, to get the large Twilight Drake Mountain Giant, because then you need to find mulch instead of Jade Behemoth.
Now, the cycle's the one thing they have in abundance here. They have Wrath, which in control matchups typically cycles, and the aggressive matchups it typically wants to just pinpoint remove a minion. They have Azure Drake. They have Starfire, which is actually lining up pretty well against the Emperor Thorson that Carleton has in hand. And now if they see Doomsayer, they don't have big card draw, but they do have Wild Growth and Wrath to cycle this turn. And this is why Doomsayer is not as good versus Druid as it is versus a lot of the other mid-range decks, is because they very much want to take time drawing cards.
Yeah, you're not disrupting their game plan nearly as much as you would be disrupting a Shaman or a Pirate Warrior. The Druid is going to get their threats on board. It's going to happen no matter what. It's inevitable. The more time they get to get those threats together and to draw into those cards, well, Doomsayer's just
Look at this.
helping them out maybe a little bit.
They're going to play super strong to the board here and take this Doomsayer and no life tap to go with it as a sign of weakness from Carleton. Frankly, I'm a little bit surprised they didn't life tap. And in this spot, Michigan going to try to take the lead as a result. That's a lot of card draw they sacrifice, but the damage matters a lot too. If they put Carleton in a spot where they have to use Reno Jackson rather than take care of the board position, that's usually a win for Michigan. When Reno is then occupied on the following turn due to the reload on board. Big Game Hunter joins the party too. Very heavy tech version, it looks like.
Good old BGH. Certainly not seeing him very much anymore. When he was 3 mana, he was in pretty much every deck. He was the only counter to Dr. Boom, really. Dr. Boom rotated out. BGH got nerfed. I haven't seen him as much.
Hit really hard versus Mysterious Challenger as well.
Oh, yeah.
That was another big
Avenge hits on the Challenger, becomes a 9/8.
Yeah. If you could keep the board isolated and have the secrets proc by Mysterious Challenger alone, you could sweep the board with Hero Power, Big Game Hunter, and any attack minion.
Ah, the good old days.
It was a big offset.
3 mana BGH. Dr. Boom in Standard. So much has changed, Admirable.
I remember when I said that if the Boombots had Taunt, Dr. Boom would be playable.
I don't know that I would admit that in front of an audience.
Well, it is.
But you just did.
It is technically true.
I mean, okay, pretty much everybody thought that Trogzor the Earthinator was going to be the 7-drop of choice out of that set.
It's just overshadowed.
It did not end up being Trogzor.
It was overshadowed. That card was good. It just was overshadowed by Boom.
Boombots killed Azure Drake every single time. You can't get better.
This card draw turn too. And this was the benefit of Michigan's tempo play last turn, is now they're free to do this.
Not to mention, Carleton was forced into just terrible use of 5 mana. Now we're not seeing Druid of the Claw very much.
No, it's not. I'm curious if that's in there over Ancient of War or in addition to it. You know, I've been a big advocate of Druid of the Claw over Ancient of War simply because against the aggressive decks, you need something to stop the board immediately. Oftentimes you don't have time to get to 7 mana safely.
Emperor comes down because Carleton simply doesn't have anything better to do. They do hit the Power Overwhelming, so combo is officially unlocked at 10 mana.
Michigan, a couple more turns, and they're going to have a huge Auctioneer swing. When you're at 10 mana, the Wild Growth represents 3 card draw from Auctioneer.
What to do?
So I think they're free to actually still use one in this spot if they really wanted to, but it would cost them the coin as well. So they are sacrificing a lot of potential draw to do that.
But will they have enough is the question. It's looking like they're going to have a lot. And eventually what the Jade Druid wants to do is, in the very, very late game, when you have no cards left except Jade Idol and Gadgetson, you can cycle Jade Idol, for days and days and just keep drawing, keep building up your board. Doesn't look like they're going to want to get to that point. They're going to be able to push ahead far before it. But that is one of the big strengths of the Gadgetson in the Jade Druid against control.
Yeah, just allows that super late game powerhouse. Now Michigan, though, they do have to be a bit concerned about the Emperor discounts. I don't think combo is something they're really afraid of, but the extra potential for Carleton to have very effective removal is starting to get a bit scary. I mean, Twisting Nether is sitting at 7 mana. That's something they got to think about. Shadowflame being at 3, that's a big one. I mean, Sylvanas Shadowflame is now at potentially an 8 mana access. So every single turn they have to think about how those major tools line up against the play they're making. If they fall into a really bad situation, they overcommit or they get a big Sylvanas play happen against them, that's tough. So Michigan, I think, likely to play a bit more of a conservative game and try to have the resources trade with Carleton until they can establish that endgame Jade package.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that Carleton would be able to lock this game up, is if Michigan were to overextend, Carleton clears the board very efficiently, and Michigan doesn't have anything to reload with, or they can't respond effectively, then Carleton can get their own minions on board and start to push. Brand coming down this turn, usually you want to save it for Kazakis.
Claps going on.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
I don't know if they've been doing it every turn and I just caught it, or if that one drew my attention.
I would like to see them clapping. You know, when you've got the target dummy in the bottom right corner on that board, and like the more damage you deal, like the people in the top left on the, oh gosh, what is it? The Grand Tournament board start like bouncing up and down. The target dummy starts spinning around. If you deal more damage, I want them to be like the live version of the Grand Tournament board.
Yeah, Michigan's got to pay attention to the Brand. They don't really have much of a choice in this spot. It looks like your opponent's trying to set up a really big high-risk, high-reward play. And even if they aren't, the nightmare of them drawing a super strong card in the face of you leaving it alone is just too much. Even though Carleton's sitting at 17, and that attack means a lot.
We've seen some very liberal use of Brand Bronzebeard today. Card can garner a lot of value, but in some cases, you know, it has pseudo taunt. You need to prevent 4 damage to your face. It's one way you can do it.
So many possibilities.
Well, the pacing for Michigan's been good. I mean, 8 damage is a big threat to Carleton at this point. This isn't quite a board they can afford a twisting nether, I don't think, though. 15 is not 100% safe either. Swipe, Feral Rage, swipe, swipe. Those both kill them right now. Double Feral Rage. There's quite a few draws that win, and that's one of them.
That's going to be it. Michigan be able to close this one out just because Carleton had absolutely no resources. It wasn't even Jades in this case. It was just a couple of mid-range minions that Carleton couldn't deal with.
Just unchecked Azure Drake, just hitting away, hitting away, hitting away. And that Starfire was part of what enabled that too. Just being able to clear the Emperor and continue to attack face turn after turn.
That's pretty much the extent of the Jade Druid's burst from hand. But here we get first-hand experience with the Druid being able to close out some games that, you know, maybe you think would have gone a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird spot to be in, honestly. That's one of the powers of the mid-range decks versus control, is that if you have enough card economy moving, one thread at a time is usually enough to put your opponent in range. And then moving into a key turn, you take a value trade, set up a board. And then they look at it and they go, this isn't quite enough to clear because they just have so many cards, so I have to take a risky play. They take a risky play. Sometimes they get punished. That was a beautiful way to play that for Michigan. They just paced everything properly.
Yeah, great patience, and they were rewarded heavily. So University of Michigan takes game number 1 with the Jade Druid. Carleton going to need to draw a bit better with their Reno Warlock. Definitely did not hit the mid-range minions they needed on turn 5. Mind Control Tech plus Sun Fury Protector is just not what you want to be putting on board. So they're going to have another shot with that deck, but now they need to take out the Shaman and the Warrior on Michigan's side.
Yeah. Looking at that game, too, you know, 2 major things happened on both sides. Carleton hit Doomsayer, and then Michigan realized that the fast-paced play and the sacrifice of long-term cards wasn't going to hurt them enough. Going for that aggressive Azure Drake was a big deal. I mean, but I think both sides actually drew fairly well. I mean, their turn 5 was a little bit dead, but turn 5
Before
against
that,
Druid,
it was looking okay.
Turn 5 against Druid's often going to be dead. But remember, on the turn they played Doomsayer, they're also 4 went a life tap on that turn. Would that extra option maybe have given them some play, or potentially given them play in that spot? I personally didn't see a reason to not life tap.
It's tough to say. But regardless, they're going to have to put it out of their minds and just move ahead in this series. The winner of this match does get their 5th win in the board and set themselves up. They make it to the regional playoffs, which is the next stage of this tournament. Yeah. So a lot riding on this.
Yeah,
now Carleton's going in with the mid-range Shaman.
Yeah, Lightning Storm indicative of the fact that it's going to be mid-range, just as well as the way the metagame has been adapting. Against Pirate Warrior, this is typically a favored matchup for Carleton. Their main game plan is simply to keep the board state under control from Michigan as they try to just pile on damage. and then eventually recover the board state with some taunts and maybe a heal or two. Michigan doesn't have one of those blistering fast starts. They have one more of the value-oriented starts. So this game may play a little bit more a-traditional with Carleton keeping the Jade Claws. Not effective right now.
That's a very minion-heavy start from Michigan. Carleton picks up Ragnaros the Fire Lord. That's not a very common inclusion in mid-range Shaman, but then again, with the meta evolving so much now, it's hard to pin down any real standard version of the deck.
We've been seeing it a lot less and less in Shaman decks. Last season, prior to the release of Mean Streets, that card was all over the place. Barnes was in every single Shaman deck. They just needed efficient things to do. And with Reno Mage and Reno Warlock being two very played matchups, you would think that card's more played. But frankly, the Shaman tends to do fairly well against those decks anyway. And so that card being in there, I think a bigger nod to maybe playing a less greedy version and needing that extra damage as a result. I personally like the Ragnaros.
Well, you remove the Pirate package from the mid-range Shaman, and we've seen Acidic Swampos, we've seen Devolve be common tech choices. Maybe this mid-range Shaman is geared a little bit more towards beating other later game decks.
Yeah, I mean,
very possible.
Something to think about is if you have Ragnaros, you are a little bit more free to actually trade your resources fairly aggressively. It allows you to just play 1-for-1 the whole way and then let Ragnaros do the heavy lifting. We've been seeing teams over and over again really save a lot of their removal and try to find those big swing turns and never getting them.
Yeah, it's very true. Well, now Michigan has a lot of great minion resources, but that Bloodsail Cultist cannot come down this turn with another Pirate.
This is kind of an interesting board position for Michigan here, because if they play the Frothing Berserker, they're really giving it right to coin Jade Lightning. That's certainly a big threat that they have to think about. But at the same time, if they don't play the Frothing Berserker right now, it's going to offset their curve a little bit. But they're actually going to attack the Healing Totem, too, to buff up the Frothing Berserker. Wow. I'm pretty surprised by that.
Yeah, I am too.
Jade Claws and Flame Tongue maybe is concerned?
Possibly. I mean, you're playing Frothing Berserker strongly into coin Jade Lightning regardless. Maybe you play around the other one.
Well, get ready. This is a big turn.
Makes the Arcanite Reaper a little bit awkward, but it does not even matter because this is a powerful swing from Michigan.
Yeah, I think right to trade in the patches here as well.
Weaken Lightning Storm.
So it looks like second Jade Lightning here for Carleton. It's about as good as they're going to get. And their hand is shaping up fairly nicely, too. I mean, Ragnaros definitely a big hitter versus Pirate Warrior, too. If you have a safe life total, that card delivers damage very quickly. But Michigan's hand not really lacking in that department in terms of the push here. They have 10 on Arcanite Reaper, 4 on the Axe, 6 from the Leroy, 5 on board. This is a lot of damage. I think I'd like to see them get a little bit reckless here.
You want to see Leroy come down this turn?
I totally wouldn't mind it. I mean, I think you expect to get your board swept here quite often anyway, or for the board to be swung around. They just need to make sure they get under the taunt damage. I think that's one of their big concerns at the moment.
I mean, uncontested over 3 turns, this would be lethal. Mid-range Shaman, however, has Jinyu Water Speaker, Feral Spirits, Stoneclaw Totem. It's very unlikely that all of this damage is going to face.
Interesting. So they choose to wipe out the 2/2 here and just set up for the Dread Corsair to be pulling a lot of weight. You know, actually, I really like this a lot, too, because they've seen 2 Jade Lightnings at this point, and the Arcanite Reaper is going to challenge any of the minions that hit play. This is really smart by Michigan, too, if they just pace it. It's tough for Carleton to strongly answer this. You know, they already have Thing from Below checked on board. Mana Tide Totem, stuff like that's not a threat to him anymore. And Carleton's hand's just kind of stuffed to the brim with card advantage effects. I mean, to me, this looks like Bran and Jade Claws. And that's not very safe when you're staring down 8 and you're at 17.
No, absolutely not. I really like how Michigan played this out. Maybe taking a trade that a lot of people wouldn't deem necessary. But in this case,
This is with the swing onto the totem from the first charge of Fiery War Axe, too.
They would have had an extra 3 if they'd gone face with that. And they lost the frothing immediately. So essentially their turn 3, they did nothing. And they're still in this advantageous of a position.
Oh, and Korkron gets drawn as well. That's going to be pretty close to doing it. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's going to set them to 5. Carleton needs a second taunt or a heal. Wow. Michigan's going to try to think of a battle cry here that changes this board state. And I think Jinyu's probably the one they're going to think about here. With N'Zoth's first mate and Leroy and 2 charges on the Arcanite, I could totally see trading over the Brand in this spot.
I think it's very smart. Jinyu gains Carleton 12. It's very possible that you lose from that position. Carleton has so many more cards than you. You know in the late game they're going to be favored. In the game itself, they should be favored. So you're in a pretty good spot. Why take unnecessary risk?
Now that being said, even if you run into Jinyu, it means you need to draw 6 more damage. So when you put the Korkron into the brain here, you're putting yourself on automatically having to draw 4 more damage. And then if they hit Jinyu on top of that, then you have to draw 10 more damage. So killing the brain and not killing the brain are actually very similar plays.
That's true. Either way results in you needing to find something if your opponent has a taunt. Fortunately for Pirate Warrior, there's a lot of ways to find that damage.
Well, the fact that they didn't attack face of the Korkron Elite now means a taunt, just a single taunt, actually keeps them alive for a turn. Because they get to trade the board down now, and that's 6 from Leroy. So with no Jinyu and a taunt, they need 3 more damage.
Okay, Heroic Strike.
Heroic Strike won't end it this turn. Oh, no, it would end it this turn because of the...
Leroy goes into the taunt.
Yep.
That's 9.
Wow, it's really unfortunate that this is sent to the sacrifice. And they're going to think about that, too.
Yeah. They're going to know that if they had hit face with the Korkron, then likely they would have just won.
Yeah, they're going to get the damage in now with the Leroy. This is smart. Don't let the opposing team roll a taunt. If they do roll a taunt, now you need Mortal Strike to win.
It's giving yourself as many outs as you can possibly have.
And honestly, looking at Lightning Storm, this feels like a card that's been more important in mid-range decks, or against mid-range decks, than it has been against aggro decks. And the overload is really the big consideration of that. It's just a lot of mana you have to sink into that effect, and it doesn't always clear the board.
Well, Maelstrom Portal is usually enough against aggro. So 2 Lightning Storms. I don't know how I feel about 2. Maybe 1's enough.
And, anticipating more mid-range, perhaps.
Yeah. How good is it really against Dragon Priest? It's not great. In the mirror, it's pretty good.
2 or more damage will end the game for Michigan this turn. And it looks like they have 2 more draws to get that done. The damage from Michigan, 17, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus 8 from the Ragnaros. So they don't have the damage to close next turn with Ragnaros, even if it was available through the overload.
It's not going to cut it.
And Michigan's going to be 1 damage away now. So I think they should actually hang on to this Bloodsail Raider, so that way it activates Cultist as another potential out here. So I think this is N'Zoth's first mate, 1 to face. Hold on to the Bloodsail Raider. Although the Bloodsail Raider might just buy them a lot of time since it has to be attacked.
It's true. And now Carleton can draw heal. That's not going to help him. They've got their squad in the back chanting. Really
That's
wish we
a
had
big
listened
one.
in. That's huge.
That's going to cut the outs down to direct burn spells from Michigan. Wow.
Carleton could even put up a second taunt if they want it.
I think it's the Tunnel Trog and Lightning Storm. I don't know, do they need the 8 damage from Ragnaros in the following turn?
It's possible. Regardless of if you Lightning Storm or Flame Wreath Faceless this turn, you can't Rag next turn.
Wow, this is weird.
Michigan's going to have a couple turns here.
Yeah, I mean, Carleton missing a couple points of damage to close on the following turn, so it looks like 2 draws for Michigan.
That's not going to do it.
And they can't punch through this totem right now. And now it's down to Mortal Strike or Bash or something like that. It has to get past the taunt because...
Even if you hit it this turn, Healing Totem heals up the taunt, so you can't go through it again. So Charge Minion won't do it. I'm not seeing Bash in this list. I'm thinking it's probably going to be Mortal Strike or Bust.
And oftentimes there's one Mortal Strike.
Michigan hasn't seen Jinyu. They've got to be kicking themselves for trading the Corcoran into the Bran. It was a very defensive play, but if they hadn't done it, they could have been very, very punished.
It's a tough thing to think about when it's so close to that line where is it better to hope your opponent doesn't draw it, play that percentage, or is it better to actually play around it and mitigate in anticipation of it being there? It's a really tough call, and in this game, if they had simply pushed, they would have gotten there. They do get punished a lot of times in that spot, but this wasn't one of those games. So one more turn. It doesn't really matter much how Carleton sets this up. It's going to take lethal in 2 turns. Almost any way you slice it. It just boils down to the Michigan draw at this point. They're going to look for the most optimal way to do this, but not much difference either way.
Yeah, doesn't really matter. Ragnaros is probably going to represent 8 to face. Regardless, they're going to be able to close this out in 2 turns.
Single draw for the 2-0 lead.
Mortal Strike or Bust.
No dice. So close.
1 damage off of lethal for Michigan.
They also attacked that totem with the Fiery War Axe. Would that have changed anything? Really close calls. And that's a perfect example of aggression, is you have to weigh every single thing. 2 opportunities to push more damage. They forewent both of them, and that's a tied series.
I mean, it's tough to say. If you don't remove the Healing Totem, maybe the Shaman rolls Stoneclaw Totem earlier. Maybe that prevents more than 3 damage. Tough to say. But either way you cut it, Michigan 1 off lethal there. Carleton ties up the series 1-1, and they were certainly celebrating about that.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, that's a 1 health victory, as you can't get much better than that.
1 health or 100 health, you win either way.
Yeah, you only need 1 to live.
That last point of health is the most important thing about the game.
Yeah. Now, sometimes decks turn your last 17 into effectively the last 1.
Yeah.
But, it requires a combo. Good on them for building a combo.
All right, so Warlock and Priest against Shaman and Warrior.
Not entirely sure how this is stacking up. I would expect Carleton to struggle to the Warrior in the next 2 games, but I'm not really sure about the Shaman here. We've been seeing Priest go really back and forth to that matchup. At times it looks like it crushes it, and then other times you watch that matchup and you're like, how does Priest win? It's sort of a weird dance where I think the early battle is dictating so much of how that matchup goes. The Reno Warlock, though, I imagine it's going to fare pretty well against mid-range Shaman most of the time, if that's what it happens to be. That's been by far the most popular choice from collegiate players lately, is the mid-range versions of it.
Yeah, I think that's all we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Certainly there was a Flame Wreath Faceless in Carleton's build, but now that you don't run any Pirates, you can slot that into a more mid-range Shaman deck. I think it's going to come down to, can they get a win on this Pirate Warrior? And they're going to try to do it with the Reno Warlock.
Yeah, this matchup tends to be one-sided very often. It's either Michigan gets off to a great start, bludgeons Carleton to death very quickly amidst no real early game action, or the second one is that it's able to set up Frothing Berserker and just get immense amount of value out of that card. It's so strong versus Hellfire that it just piles on damage. Carleton actually going to mulligan away Kazakus and Imp Gang Boss in this matchup too. Imp Gang Boss, I would tend to say, is a little bit slow, but Kazakus is one of their big payoff cards. Landing Kazakus for a 5-cost potion is one of the ways they can restabilize the board, sweeping and gaining armor or sweeping, resurrecting a minion. I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah, I feel like they would have been more likely to keep it had they been on coin. That would have given them the option of Kazakus and a 1-cost potion in the same turn. In this case, I guess Carleton, they wanted to hit pay dirt. They need that early action, and then they just want to draw into Kazakus at the exact right moment.
Gosh, I don't know. I don't think I've ever mulliganed Kazakus. That card's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I've done it either. Just seems like games that you don't draw. I mean, obviously Reno Jackson is what you're going for here more. So I guess if you know, you've got a 1-track mind on Reno Jackson, then Kazakus isn't going to be as useful.
Ooh,
oh, there's Reno.
So it looks like Michigan, even though they have a strong early start, they are going to be fairly reliant on Frothing Berserker this game, whether or not they know it. You know, that's another story, but...
A Shadow Bolt in the hand of Carleton. That's the best removal for Frothing Berserker.
Yeah, step one for Carleton is just simply get the board under reasonable control. You don't have to have full control. You just have to be able to shut down the major damage effects for Michigan. Oftentimes that's either a big Bloodsail Raider, you know, a Captain, South Sea Captain, Frothing Berserker, or a Kor'kron Elite that hits repetitively. Those are really some of the big ones that they need to take care of. Outside of that, if they're in any reasonable shape and they land Reno Jackson, that is game-ending in a lot of spots. But here, I mean, they may Shadow Bolt the Bloodsail Raider.
It's very risky. Because on 3, Bloodsail Cultist and Frothing Berserker are those are the best plays that your opponent can have.
They hold on, and I'm going to be curious to see how Michigan responds to this. It's almost certainly going to be Frothing Berserker at this point. But now Carleton has to think about whether or not they want to life tap. We saw them forego it earlier in a much less aggressive matchup. But is Reno Jackson giving them more confidence?
I mean, I would think so. It's already turn 3. Put yourself at 22. You're taking 3 from the Raider.
The thing I'm looking at is they actually kind of have all the tools they need to win this matchup. You know, is that extra 2 life, does that ever kill you?
That's something you certainly need to think about.
It's a second Frothing Berserker, too.
You go to 23, 20 from the Raider. Yeah, it's possible. That second Berserker could be big.
Oh, wow. That's another really big one, too. I mean, they're going to get to the Reno turn, but Michigan's drawn like a really minion-heavy hand.
That's unusual.
Well, these size of minions, that is, anyway. Getting more and more vulnerable to Hellfire by the moment, but...
Oh, they're playing against Reno. It's 30 unique cards. Sometimes you just gotta hope they don't have it. I say sometimes, but it's usually most of the time.
Usually all the time. Your opponent just Shadow Bolted your Frothing Berserker. I'm slamming the other one. I don't even think this is close, to be perfectly honest. I guess the debate is whether or not you attack and then coin out the Fiery War Axe or not. Which I personally would really like to see. It'd be going straight into Carleton's turn 6, which means they get to play the Kor'kron Elite and the Dread Corsair on that turn.
Yeah.
So then if Carleton wants to Hellfire clear that board, the Frothing Berserker will kill him. And if they don't Hellfire and clear the board, that means they get to kill Reno and crack back with the big Frothing Berserker. I think that's definitely the setup you go for.
It's a great setup, but you need to think 3 turns in advance.
This works as well. You know, I anticipated them attacking with the upgrade weapon, but it looks like they took that turn calculating whether or not they needed that damage or not. Yeah, this is going to get really scary for Carleton here. That second Frothing Berserker that's the juice.
Yeah, that is not what they wanted to see. They had the perfect removal for the first one. No matter how good Frothing Berserker seems, it's not a legendary. You can run 2. That second one can be killer. Yeah, Carleton's going to make it 6, but that post-Reno damage.
Do they have enough to clear everything here? Yeah, they definitely do.
Yeah.
Wow, that Frothing Berserker is going to be very angry. Honestly, that actually may have killed Carleton right there. I don't know if they have the cards to stabilize through this. Now, Mind Control Tech could have something to say about that, but
That's not a bad point. You can MC Tech and Bruiser. Maybe
No.
you don't have to Reno till 7.
MC Tech Bruiser, I think, would still kill them when they don't take Frothing Berserker. And Reno here, I mean, look at how much damage is on board. If they Reno here, they're going to die.
You Reno, you only heal for 16.
I mean, there's 15 on board right now.
Okay, so if you Bruiser, MC Tech, Berserker's great. You take the Korkron. You kill...
I'm thinking MC Tech and Sun Fury Protector looks better, personally.
Really?
You play the MC
Yeah.
Tech first. So they take the second taunt, so that's
Okay,
big.
well, that's really good.
Captain gets drawn. They don't have a way to split this damage right.
Four, 7, 11. That might have just saved Carleton.
What now?
If they took the Frothing Berserker, the taunt, or the charge, they were in pretty good shape. That's the reason I would like to see them evaluate too. If they like steal a Frothing Berserker, for instance, do they need to play Second Ray Bruiser, or can they just simply Sun Fury? I think they had a few options there, but you know, the turn is really tough. You're on the brink of sealing the game.
Take your time.
Yeah, I mean, they got caught up in the moment, I think.
It may work out for them regardless. I mean, I think this was okay. If the MC Tech takes the Berserker, the Korkron trades into it. If you Sun Fury, the Bruiser, Korkron doesn't trade directly
So look
into.
at this. Heroic Strike into the Second Ray Bruiser, Korkron into the Second Ray Bruiser, trade over the 3/3, Frothing Berserker goes face for $1 million. Mind Control deck doesn't contest it on board, and your opponent's so low that they can't Hellfire that board. Ooh, I think that was a mistake from Michigan.
If the Korkron goes into the Bruiser, the Heroic Strike goes into the Bruiser, Frothing gains 3. That's a
2 more
10-4?
from goes 2 more from the Bloodsail Raider as well. I mean, that would have set Carleton down to 4, facing a 4/1. I guess they could have Hellfired and lived at 1, but then the Mortal Strike would have mopped it up.
Yeah, Carleton's forced to
Ooh.
Reno. You have Frothing still on board.
I think Michigan missequenced that, and I think it's going to cost them.
It was a 5-4. The Raider ran in, bumped it to 7. Korkron would bump it to 9. Heroic Strike to 10.
Blood and plunder.
You'd have a 10-4 and a 3-1 this turn, but you wouldn't have Heroic Strike left.
But you'd have the Mortal Strike instead.
Yeah.
Well, you probably have a 10-4, honestly, or a 12-4 because they would trade over the captain, or the 3 or the 4/1. Oh God, yeah, it'd be miserable because they trade into the captain there. They put 2 more on the Frothing Berserker, so
That'd be a
crack back
12-4.
for 15 at that point with Mortal Strike in your hand. Now this way they did get an additional minion out of it, I think. No, I don't think they did.
Because it would have been Frothing Raider.
Yeah.
Instead, they got Korkron Raider. Now, Hellfire clears this up. Michigan needs Arcanite Reaper.
Well, it's Peddler Sun Fury on Carleton's side.
Then Jiraxis on 9. Yeah, Carleton just locked this one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one turn I would look at. Is do
Yeah,
you
for
trade the
sure.
Frothing into the Bruiser, or do you value the Frothing higher than the Heroic Strike and the Korkron?
I mean, that's the key card in the matchup is Frothing Berserker. That's a tough one to let go of.
They kept it in the mulligan. First one got killed. Second one could have gotten in for 12 damage, 15 damage post Reno.
Yeah, there's no recovery here at this point. Reno has done too much.
What now?
Michigan going to look for ways to bring this back around, but
I don't
as soon
think
as
there
they
is
see
any.
Sun Fury, that's gonna do it. Wow.
It was close. It was very close. Fortunately, that's how a lot of the Pirate Warrior games feel. You come so close, and you just can't quite close it out.
That's what the mulligan on the Kazakas too. So Kazakas, they decided, you know what, this isn't going to be a big enough payoff card. We know that we need Reno Jackson. They found Reno Jackson, and even amidst a horrendous board position, that small slip up, I think, gave them a lot of extra percentage in this game. The fact that that frothing was not threatening a big hit completely changed the scope of it.
It's tough to tell, because if the frothing had lived, then the Hellfire would have come down, the Reno trades into the frothing. You know, maybe Michigan still doesn't have the follow-up. It might not have mattered, but then again, it might have.
I don't think
it's impossible to tell for sure.
I think it likely would have been inconsequential in that game, but the fact of the matter is that that's a sacrifice that you need to be keeping up with. That crack back after Reno Jackson is one of the ways that you win back with Frothing Berserker. So I would like to see that a little bit more cleaner. I also just pull more damage that way, I think, too.
Well, Carleton, with their crowd of cheering and dancing fans behind them, have taken a lead in this series 2-1. Before we get into game number 4, we have another tweet. Let's see what it is. This one comes to us from Sizer13. What's your favorite Hearthstone board and interactable feature? Mine's Rags Telescope. Hashtag Tespa.
I like the catapult.
Like the catapult?
I'm a catapult fan for life.
The catapult's fun. I like the little garden. Put the water on. You can get the boot. You can get the golden berry. That one's fun. And I also just like breaking windows.
I just wish the catapult dealt a point of damage.
Oh,
Get
you
these
know
games
what?
over with.
I always the laser, the one where you drop the thing and the chicken
the
pops up. You got the rocket, but then like the laser in the bottom right corner, I always just move it one to the left and I just shoot the hero in the face constantly. I just do that all the time when I'm streaming. I just like one of these days this is gonna work. It's like shield slam face. One of these days it's gonna work. I just keep lasering him in the face. Forget about the rocket. Right to the face.
I wish dealt a point of damage.
Neither the catapult nor the laser deal a point of damage, but regardless, tweet at Team Tespa. Go on Facebook /Team Tespa. Ask us questions. Let us know who you're rooting for. Earn yourself the $1 on Flame card back. It doesn't deal 1 point of damage, but it looks pretty sweet while you're shooting lasers at your opponent's face.
Get featured, get card back. Seems easy enough. All I got to do is ask a question. I need to ask some more questions to ourselves.
You are a big fan of asking questions.
I am.
You love asking questions. Certainly nothing wrong with that, but I got a lot of questions.
Got all of them.
Well, the one question remaining is, can Carleton University close out this series? They just have to get a win with that priest, and if they do, they get their 5th win in this Swiss tournament, and they move on to the regional playoffs.
Yeah, big game for them as folks cheer on. Just enjoying some Hearthstone at this fireside.
I'm seeing a pop figure on that table over there.
These guys are having
I'm really
a good
wondering
time.
what's going on there. Could that be a bottle opener?
I'm jealous.
Maybe a plushie?
I wish I was there. I
We'd have some fun.
I like getting together and playing Hearthstone.
It's always nice to have people to bounce some ideas off of. You can trash talk the person right in front of you. Oh, there's nothing like it.
3rd try with Pirate Warrior for Michigan here. And this matchup, it usually is Pirate favored, but there's certainly some early starts that can shut down their entire assault. And a lot of it boils down to just the early game power that Carleton can provide. Twilight Whelp's a big one. Wormrust Agent, very important. We saw Ysera in their hands, so it looks like they're a little bit teched for the mirror match.
Mm-hmm.
But Twilight Guardian's also a big one. If they just continue to play very health-efficient minions, eventually that offsets the weapons. And if the board gets slow enough, their hero power can take over the game, and what a start for Carleton.
Very strong. Now, right before this game, you were talking about your experiences with Dragon Warrior, actually, off-stream. And I was really wondering, because you said that you keep Twilight Guardian pretty much all the time. Does that same rule apply for Dragon Priest?
I think it depends on the matchup you're in a little bit more, because you don't have Fiery War Axe just be an enormous power every time you draw it. So for Carleton, they are much more reliant on having a curve. since their minions don't quite operate the same way as weapons do. Weapons are just super efficient. But when you have a curve, Twilight Guardian becomes immensely more powerful, and they pick up Cabal Talon Priest.
Man.
So the upgrade was looking super strong in this spot, and it still is. But Cabal Talon Priest is just going to continue to dry the board. And the thing here isn't that Carleton's been getting this massive advantage in completing shutting down the game, but they're offsetting a ton of damage. They will scale better if it goes to the later stages. But that Bloodsail Raider is going to have something to say about that too.
And don't forget about little old Patches.
Well, no Dragon picked up yet, so Twilight Guardian looking a little bit dead. I think Bloodsail Raider might have been enough to put Michigan at an advantage here.
Yeah, Carleton will have one more draw for the Dragon Activator for the Guardian, but this Raider directly checking the Wormrest Agent. The Talon Priest comes down, then you clean it off with the Patches.
And this might be a Technician play over the Talon Priest in some instances.
Now Carleton, they will have Holy Nova, maybe to get some favorable trades, heal up some damaged minions. They're going to have to think out their next couple of turns, though.
Once again, Michigan's drawing one of those very strong hands just in terms of their individual cards and how powerful they are. Now the Technician here is meant to set up on the Cabal Talon Priest for a trade next turn. They might not get that, though.
Oh, the Bloodsail Cultist can buff this to a 5/3 weapon. If you really value that Raider.
And I definitely would at this point. It's really tough for Priest to deal one single point of damage. They just don't have the tools in their deck often to do this. And suddenly, Carleton's in a lot of trouble.
I mean, there's a Dragon, but now this Raider gets a trade on the Wormrest Agent and the Twilight Guardian.
And they have a 5/2 Fiery War Axe on the board right now. They have another Bloodsail Raider. They have Kor'kron Elite. All their cards live through Holy Nova.
Oh, God, this is rolling in so well for them.
This is a disaster for Carleton right now.
And their hand was so strong.
And that's...
I mean, your eyes got big and you looked right at me, and
That's the weapon portion of this too. I mean, that's what drives such a large portion of this deck is the ability to just have so much gas with a weapon. The weapon just does everything. I mean, what does Holy Nova even do here?
Well, it takes 8 off the board. That's about it. You heal for 2.
It takes 8, leaves 10.
Maybe if you have another Holy Nova and you draw it next turn.
I mean, honestly, that's probably their best bet is to hope they draw another Holy Nova.
Or Dragon Fire Potion, if they've got it. It's not an
23
automatic
damage.
inclusion. 7, 10, 15, 19, plus 4. Yup.
Holy smokes.
Oh, Michigan making really quick work out of game number 4.
You upgrade a weapon enough. And
eventually it deals a lot of damage.
Yeah, it's legendary if you upgrade it enough. Holy cow.
Exactly 23 on turn 6 through 3 taunt minions and a 3/5 Technician. And 2 heal on the face. Wow. That small-time Buccaneer, don't need it.
A small-time Buccaneer probably would have been a liability that game.
It would have meant that you don't have Argent Horse Rider.
It would have run right into the Wormrest Agent on turn 1.
Well,
wow.
We're going to our 5th game 5 in the last 2 days. Carleton going to bring back that Priest, and University of Michigan on the Shaman. We haven't seen exactly what kind of Shaman it is, but based on recent results, most likely mid-range.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to say it's mid-range Shaman. That's been super popular in the last couple of weeks. A lot of people even said it was stronger than the aggro version prior to the small-time Buccaneer change. And in this matchup, I don't know who's favored in this one. It's hard for me to say one way or the other because I've seen it go so decisively both ways. Oftentimes when you see a deck win in a poor matchup, they kind of squeak by. They just get there with the right window of opportunity. In this one, I've seen both sides dominate in games. And what it seemed like to me is that if Carleton, with their priest, if they're able to get board position and start picking up lots of value trades, they tend to be super favored. So I would say Michigan probably needs to do some work investing into the board position and try to deal with Northshire Cleric as quickly as possible. If Carleton's able to just draw a lot of cards from that, it's tough to come back.
Yeah, that's going to be the way that Michigan takes this one. And full mulligan for Michigan, they don't want to find situational AoE and removal. Both these hands are shaping up to be pretty decent. Now, I know Coin Totem Golem's a good thing. George C. assured me of that.
Honestly, this is the one matchup where I don't think it's quite as good. You are worried about Shadow Word Pain, and the turn 2 play that Carleton I think is most likely to have is going to be Worm Rust Agent, and Totem Golem doesn't line up well into that. So the things to think about are making sure that you can land Totem Golem and the following turn be able to buff it with Flame Tongue Totem, or to be able to get a chain of minions on board and be able to actually wipe out the minions as they hit the board. So in this spot, I think they're more eyeing the Mana Tide Totem on turn 2.
Yeah, and in this case, Totem Golem on 1 would mean they pretty much can't do anything the following turn. So for the sake of a solid curve here on out, they're going to hold it. And
it's like Twilight Whelp to me.
Yeah, Fairy Dragon's not going to do much. Onyxia is a little bit too late.
I wonder.
By the very, very late game, your opponent's Jades are just too strong. You're probably losing that game anyway.
Yeah, are you going to choose to draw a 9-cost card right now? That's tough to do.
All right, good take by Carleton.
And with the Hex drawn too, if simple minion pressure is the answer to Mana Tide Totem here, they're actually safe to keep it on board, maybe get a couple draws. Now, if they save it for next turn, I think that's when it is a little bit more problematic for Carleton, is on turn 4, if they want a Shadow Word Pain, it means that they're not playing Twilight Drake. So step 1 for Michigan here has been to try to establish the board, first and foremost.
Yeah, you want to disrupt your opponent's turns best way that you possibly can. Turn 4 is a big power turn for Dragon Priest. Twilight Guardian is overstatted for its cost. And if you can disrupt that, throw them off. Turn 5 is also great if they then have to do a taunt on turn 5 because they feel threatened.
You also have to think about the
you.
counterplay potential too. Like say they coin Mana Tide and Carleton answers back by just playing a Brand.
That's a good point.
You know, suddenly you look at that board and you go,
If I don't have Jade Lightning, I'm in trouble.
and you don't even have access to it because you coined out the Mana Tide. So, you know, you'd almost certainly have to use Hex in that position, and that's a nightmare.
The Hex targets aren't the best in the Dragon Priest. Usually it tops out at Draconid Operative. Obviously we've seen Ysera, but it's what the Nether Spite and the Draconid Operative represent. The potential for Hex targets it's impossible to calculate just because you don't know what they're taking off of Nether Spite, you don't know what they're taking from your deck.
Yeah, that's a good point to make too. Hex oftentimes is for tempo in this matchup more than it is as like a stop the engine sort of thing. You know, like say like you Hex like an Archmage Antonidas, for instance. A lot of times you've stopped an engine
Yes.
from your opponent. If you
Absolutely.
Hex a Draconid Operative, you're just stopping them from clocking something for 5.
Well, we'll see if that's what it has to come down to. Carleton played the Welt this turn. They had 1 extra mana. It filled out the curve very well. Challenges the Golem. But now their Guardian is stranded. They don't have another dragon in hand.
Yeah, it is a bit interesting of a play. I mean, they do get to generate some from the heel, but this is where Michigan is going to try to take advantage of this. Just load up the board, look for the Flame Tongue setup on the following turn. I can't imagine they're actually attacking here with this Totem Golem. Wow.
Imagine it, Admirable.
It's like a layup.
Because you can see it. It's like a layup?
They're just here, take the Totem Golem. They're just giving it to you.
Oh. I don't know that I would describe that as a layup, but maybe they're like, here.
Oh, you're thinking the sports ball sense.
Yeah, I'm thinking sports ball
Yeah.
layup.
The only thing I know about sports ball is when you slam dunk the football into the golf hole.
I
Uh-huh.
wonder.
Okay. Sure. So we're not going to be casting ESPN anytime soon. Fair enough.
Shadow Word Pain was a pretty excellent draw.
Michigan just has so many tools, though.
You know, that was a big one too. They had some strong early game. They got a key removal spell in the face Totem Golem. Suddenly Michigan here, that Mana Tide looking like it's going to be limited to 1 draw unless they can get a better setup here. And if they play Thing from Below here, it's just right in the Shadow Word Death. Not that the damage is really piling up from Carleton, but if you give Carleton the time, eventually they're going to put together, you know, Azure Drakes. They're going to get Draconid Operatives. Dragon Priest scales very well. I dare say better than Jade Shaman does.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some really ridiculous Dragon Priest games. There was a mirror yesterday where Brand Bronzebeard plus Operative plus another Spite Historian. It's just stupid things. I actually went back to my hotel, played a couple of Dragon Priest games last night and this morning. Found myself in one of those very similar situations, and it's just... It gets really, really crazy if you let the Dragon Priest have enough time.
Some weak draws from Carleton, though. They really haven't been able to get anything going. Made good use of the Twilight Whelp, but, you know, 3 a turn is not a threat. Dragon Priest's very low burst. So it's just take their time, take their time, take their time. They're going to need to draw some big value cards soon.
Yeah, Brand Corruptor is just about all they have as far as burst. And even that's very situational.
Yeah, no Corruptor getting drawn is a really big deal. I mean, no 5-drop. There's 2 Corruptors, there's 2 Azure Drakes, there's 2 Draconid Operatives. They missed on the Nether Spite Historian. That's a lot of stuff that's missed.
That's reasonable percentage to draw something that would have been really good this turn.
They're debating the Twilight Whelp here, but I think the hero power is just going to be better. The Twilight Whelp at this point probably should just be saved in hand to be their primary dragon activator.
Oh yes, the Gulf Claps. Very nice. Carleton's entourage is certainly very supportive of their decision-making.
Everyone's getting focused at the fireside. This is the tense game. This is for all the marbles. Yeah, how does Michigan really claw back here? I mean, they've been seeing Carleton have weak turn after weak turn. I got to imagine the Holy Nova is on their mind.
They really want to take advantage of Carleton's weak development so far. They just haven't had the chance. Well, they don't have their own Jade cards.
This is definitely the way to do it. You take a risk. And here their risk looks like it's going to get paid off pretty big. You know, in this spot, are you willing to play the Twilight Guardian over the Operative? I don't think you are. So the damage doesn't really matter in that aspect. Ooh, Hex is a nice one.
Certainly good, but it's not what you need right now.
Yeah, I think they're just going to chew through one of the wolves. And then just, you know, eat the damage. I mean, the damage isn't really piling up for Michigan at this point either. The combat connecting to face right now is fairly inconsequential. This is a value battle.
Yeah, it's negligible. Board State's going to win this game, not 7 early damage to face before turn 6. Yeah, the Twilight Whelp slots in well here, but if you hold on to it, that's going to be your permanent dragon activator. It's really important to have.
Yeah, not really much reason to play it here either. I mean, they're making almost a sacrifice to it at this point. I'm very surprised that came down. They also didn't take care of one of the Feral Spirits. This is really interesting.
I mean, you kill one. So you can kill the one on the left and try to deny the Flame Tongue value, I suppose. Your opponent's going to develop no matter what.
And Michigan knows that Flame Tongue's sticking around for quite a while. I mean, now the Twilight Whelp looks fairly genius, but maybe this is exactly what they were accounting for, too, was the fact that Michigan was overloaded, being able to drop both of these. And Have that be the play.
There's a reason that maybe you wanted to hang on to the Whelp. You could have played Guardian and Talon Priest this turn. Brand Talon Priest is also very strong.
Yeah.
Not in the face of Hex.
Yeah, Hex is always on their mind right now, so the question would be, where do you put the Talon Priest at that point? You know, Brand is going to draw attention by itself. It can't really protect it this turn. The trades are just lining up fairly awkward here. I mean, I don't think it's worth protecting a 1-3 this much.
No. But you want that Flame Tongue off the board as soon as you can.
I don't know if this is a good enough Holy Nova turn, but I don't know if they have a better play.
Well, Michigan's overloaded again next turn. They're not going to have the Jade Chieftain online.
Good old Priest Hero power.
Just so much. Well, now Michigan's at 14. Okay, this is starting to get a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
If Carleton could develop anything.
Shaman tends to be pretty safe at low life totals. I mean, one of the things they do very well is recover from these states and stabilize. The hero power is always threat. Manatide Totem, they have priority minions, you know, at the wazoo at this point. And every single time you don't take care of the board, that's another opportunity for a Flame Tongue Totem to get value. If you go too hard on board, it sets up your opponent to be able to get big Lightning Storm trades.
Second Holy Nova.
You know, Northside Cleric last turn would have been a really great draw for Carleton, but that's been a big card that's missing. No Northside Cleric, and their card economy is suffering because of it.
Yeah, also no 5-drop still. They had the one operative, netted them the Hex. Haven't been able to use it yet. No Azure Drakes.
Yeah, they've been getting really good use out of the Twilight Whelp, though, so I'm actually pretty happy that came down in hindsight. You know, having the 3/6 taunt would have meant almost nothing, but having that 2/3 Whelp is...
It's been very strong.
It's been doing some work.
All right, I like them splitting up the stats.
Yeah, it just makes more sense. I mean, 2/9 is still fairly scary for Michigan, and the brand is always scary. So at this point, if they want to clear the most health and they want to clear the brand, they don't have a single shot to do that. Now it takes 2 cards. These tools are just not really...
It's really awkward. So they can't Chieftain this turn because the brand is a huge threat. Jade Lightning takes care of the brand, but then, you know, you're at 14. 5 on board. It's a little bit scary.
I mean, maybe they could put in some hand reading here, too. I mean, so they just saw Carleton play brand and not play a dragon for value. All they did was buff up for health. Do they have a card that card can get value from right now, or significant value from? You know, my guess would be no at this point. I mean, they loaded up on health instead of loading up on cards. So if that's the case, I don't think you have to kill the brand this turn. I think you could find better ways to do it.
We've seen one operative.
Now, that being said, if you're going to Jade Lightning, that means you have to Flame Tongue Totem. So they're giving away the other Flame Tongue Totem here before going to Chieftain. I don't know. I might have liked to see the Chieftain that turn. Second Shadow Word Death, certainly a consideration, though.
Would have been a 3/3 Golem. Oh.
No Hex yet, though. I think they're free to just isolate the Flame Tongue and keep playing it slow. Definitely play the Twilight Guardian.
I wonder.
Oh, I forgot. Michigan also saw the Carleton steal a card, and they haven't seen the stealers yet. That's another big difference.
They're just going to go ahead and play the second Nova here.
And 8 life. I mean, now it's starting to become really dangerous for Michigan, too.
Oh, second Hex.
Their tools have just not lined up this game.
Does Michigan have to... I mean, Chieftain puts up a 3/3 Golem with Taunt, but you can't do anything else except Hero Power after that. If you double Hex, you remove 5 from board, but you pave the way for a Ysera that can't be removed.
I don't think they can afford a double Hex here. This is a weird spot for them to be in.
It's a weird game.
Warriors come out to play.
I mean, this is as good as they're going to get, but...
It's still really bad.
Oh, my. That is big. Michigan is getting dangerously low.
Bookworm this turn, Hex the Chieftain.
Let reading drag.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't even know if they have to Hex the Chieftain here. Push for 5 and then Hex the Chieftain, or Hex the Chieftain and push for 3?
I like push for 5. That means if you draw Corruptor and your opponent doesn't heal, they're done.
Yeah. They don't have to use Hex, though. I mean, this isn't killing the Twilight Guardian right now. They're under threat of the Bookworm.
This game has been such a slow burn. There's nothing nothing impressive, nothing.
It's been pure attrition.
Yeah, no big swings, but this Netherspite Historian and this Twilight Whelp have been on the board now for so many turns. 3 damage when your opponent's at 23 doesn't mean a lot. 3 damage when they're at 8? That's a different story.
Yeah, I mean, eventually that damage that continues to chip away, eventually it does mean something. You know, how different would this game have been if Michigan coined the Mana Tide on turn 2 as well?
Yeah, that Mana Tide sat in hand for a while.
It was just a kind of a weird spot. You know, typically your thought is to protect the Mana Tide by having minions on board. In this situation, wow, double Hex gets burned as well. Carleton has to be ecstatic about that. You know, sad to see their board go, but they're 30.
Ask Corruptor draw. That is it.
Oh my. The celebration begins. Carleton 3 games to 2 and lock themselves up a playoff spot.
Game number 5 going to Carleton University at their own fireside gathering.
The synchronized bow.
Well played to every single one of them.
Oh, it's just perfect.
And I thought that you and TJ with your synchronized like this at HCT was good. That was good. That was like...
I just threw up an okay sign. I didn't...
Okay. If you insist.
Wow. That was just... I mean, slow burn was really the right term for that, too. It was just 3 damage, 3 damage. Holy Nova, 3 damage. Holy Nova, 3 damage. And then eventually you look up, you're like...
Oh, wait. They're at 8.
You're at 8. Oh, my gosh.
You're going to die next turn. I mean, there were no powerful swings. Michigan just never got on board. They had a very minion-heavy mulligan. It was like Aya Blackpaw, Feral Spirits, Azure Drake, Jade Spirit, something like that. They threw it all away to try to find better early game. They got the Totem Golems early on, but then their hand was filled with reactive cards.
Which I think
Hex, Lightning Storm.
I think they're definitely right to mulligan the way that they did. You know, the one question I have is could that Mana Tide have come down? To me, like the number one issue you want to press against Priest is threatening a lot of card economy, because the way that they're going to win is by, you know, virtue of that game plan. It's card economy. So if you play the Mana Tide there, maybe they have to Shadow Word Pain immediately. If they don't have Shadow Word Pain, they play like a 3/5.
Yeah.
Hex, it's hard to find a super good Hex target in that matchup. Then
Maybe
you Hex
that's good
3/5,
enough.
you get your second draw for Mana Tide at that point. All your cards start going 1-for-1 with your opponent, but you're drawing an extra card every single turn. That's the whole point of that Mana Tide investment. When your opponent doesn't have the board presence to kill it immediately, that's when it can be a big payoff.
Well, Carleton University, their slow burn with Priest got them game number 5, got them their 5th match win in this tournament, and now we have an interview with our winners. Congratulations, guys. That was incredibly impressive, and I'm not just talking about the bow from your entourage.
They're very supportive.
I mean, I saw golf clapping throughout. I saw various forms of dancing. They were into it, and we were feeling it. So you guys have earned your 5th win in this tournament. That means you're through to the regional playoffs. How does it feel?
Yeah, playoffs. There we go.
Awesome. I love the support. That is awesome. You guys are... you are nailing it. So tell us, how did you come together? How did you form your team? And how did you get these guys behind you to come around and support you?
Yeah, so it's all done through our Tespa chapter. We had open sign up for teams. We ended up forming, 10 different Hearthstone teams in this tournament. And we have a great community here. We have tournaments. We have the Fireside Gathering here. And big support from the community. That's what helps us all here.
We've been seeing so many TESPA chapters evolving at all of these different colleges, and you have, as like you said, 10 teams in this tournament. You were 12th ranked in your region. There was another team from your school in 15th. How does it feel to know that you are just one of all of these teams coming in here and having success for Carleton University?
I mean, anytime you play a video game, it's awesome to have a group of people that you can play with, and especially when you're all around the same skill level. So we have teams of all different skills, so it's nice to have another team like that we can discuss decks with and stuff like that, and the whole bit.
Well, speaking of discussing decks, how did you guys come to form your lineup this week? Is it the same as last week's, or has the balance changes really affected anything?
We've gone through quite a bit of discussion since the nerf. The meta's still adjusting itself, so it's kind of hard to decide. It's just decks that we feel can do well on their own and that we're comfortable piloting. So like, I feel like Rogue is a good deck right now, but none of us are Rogue players. So I don't want to bring a deck that I just think is good that I'm not comfortable bringing. So it's all decks that we're used to playing that we think can get the job done.
Well, now you've got that playoff spot. You've clinched it at this point. This was the big match for you. In Week 7, are we going to see you maybe practice some of those decks you're not familiar with, or are you going to stick to the tried and true and go for a 6-1 record?
I think we're going to aim for that 6-1 record, get a good seed going into the playoff bracket, and just to make sure we can go as deep as we can.
Yeah, I would say that's the response we're seeing from a lot of teams. Nobody really wanting to give up their competitive nature and their competitive win rate just yet, especially since there are 9 other teams from Carleton University in this. If you can assert dominance over those teams by getting that 6th win, you never know what might happen in the regional playoffs. Well, congratulations. You are through to the next round. Is there anything else you want to say? Maybe any shout-outs you want to give before you go off to practice your decks?
Just a big shout out to all the guys back here who showed up to the fireside. It was crazy to play in front of a crowd, and they got the best chance for all of us. And a big shout out to Blizzard for providing the fireside support. It helped get everything going, got the people out here, and it was a great night.
Well, it's not over yet. Congratulations, guys. Best of luck moving on, and have fun with the rest of your fireside gathering.
Well played.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, we talked about it earlier, right before the match started. Fireside gatherings, they're so much fun.
And that's how the environment can get. You know, sometimes people just want a more chill thing. That's totally cool. Those players exist. Sometimes you want to get a little bit rowdy. That's out there too. There's something for everyone at Firesides. The first one I went to, there was so many people there. There was all kinds of stuff going on. It was just a great time. Really encourage you to check one out if you haven't done it.
Absolutely. And that was 3-2 for Carleton University. Their 5th win in this tournament means that they have secured their spot in the next phase. So congratulations to them. Before we get into our final match of the day, we've got one more tweet. Let's see what it says. This one comes to us from @Ronnie Byrne. What decks would you bring to this tournament? Which caster would be your 3rd team member? So assuming you're forced to have me on your team, you don't get to kick me off. I'm there. I'm gonna do something.
This is rough. Okay, so we need the easy to play decks then. So I'm thinking that Shaman is way out. Pirate Warrior, that's gonna be tough. Yeah, I think Jade Druid is right up our alley. Dragon Priest, that one's pretty good too.
If you have any questions you want to ask us, feel free to tweet at Team Tespa. Go on Facebook /Team Tespa. And you too can earn your $1 on Flame card back. I'm going to have to go and seriously rethink what I'm doing with my life. Because I thought that there was friendship here. Clearly I was wrong. And I did beat you on ladder once last month. And I'm going to keep nailing that one in the ground.
That's the problem, is everybody thinks and nobody ever does.
I don't even know what to make of that right now. What do you want me to do with that statement,
Nathan? It makes sense if you don't think about it.
So do so many things in life. So many things. Let's take another look at our schedule. We saw Sherbrooke 3-2 over Penn State. Carleton 3-1 over Michigan. I believe that was a 3-2. I could be incorrect. It was a 3-2, yes. So that is incorrect on our part. That is 5 3-2 matches over the last 2 days. We will be right back with our final match of the day right after this.